Welcome, everybody. I'm Sarah Backrack, and I'm a member of Northampton Neighbors and of the Speakers Committee. Northampton Neighbors and the Senior Center co-sponsor these talks. Here's a short overview of Northampton Neighbors. We started about 8 years ago, and now we have more than 1,800 members. We don't charge a fee to join or for any service or event. All ages can join, but you must be 55 years or older and live in Northampton, Leeds, or Florence to obtain a service. Our goal is to help all of us age in place and stay connected. Our next speakers are February 7th, the president of Smith College, Sarah Willie LeBreton, and on March 7th, Cassandra Holden from Bombex. All of our talks are going to be Zoomed through the winter because of increased COVID, flu, and the cold weather. I added the cold weather. Now let me introduce Gerard. Between the ages of 19 and 81, Gerard has visited 78 countries. He retired from a career in mental health as a rec therapist and team leader. In retirement, he volunteers at the Ryan School, sings with the Hampshire Choral Society, and hiking up and down the highest mountains in each state, as well as many in the 78 countries he visited. Now I'll turn it over to Gerard. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, and thank you everyone for tuning in and helping me share some of my experiences traveling around the world. Um, Last year, I went to Oman, and by doing so, I completed a goal of visiting a country for each letter of the alphabet. There are no X's, but the rest of the 25, I've got a country for each one. And O was the last piece in the puzzle, and the only country that actually has an O. As Sarah said, I've all told, I've been to 79 countries, and as a child, though, I never got to travel. Our family didn't have the means, and it wasn't until I was 19 that I got a chance to take a break from college and go over to Europe and spend a year there. And let me get my first slide. There's a map in our house that kind of gives an idea of the scope of the travel. The red flags are places that I've been to solo, and the others are places that have been mostly with family, mostly my wife Grace. Okay, and getting around when I first traveled, the way to do it was hitchhiking, and here's a picture of on the left of Grace and me in Ireland. And you know, I have the flag on the bag, and some people thought that might be a detriment to getting rides, and but I always found it an asset. Um, in fact, one time in Italy, I was alone up in northern Italy. A truck driver stopped, and he wasn't going to let me in. He looked down. You know, I pointed to the. He said, "Oh, you're not American," and I know a little Italian. I can understand what he was saying. And so I pointed to the flag, and he said, "Well, anybody could put a flag on a bag." And so I said, "Well," and then he further said, "Well, you have a face of a Neapolitan." And I said, "Well, yeah, my grandparents came from Italy," and he still didn't believe it. And finally had to show him my passport, and he let me in. But if I were Italian, he wasn't going to let me in that truck. So it did help. And now these days, I don't hitchhike anymore. Most of the time when I travel with Grace, if we go to Europe, we'll rent a car, drive around that way. If we're going to more exotic places in Asia and Africa, so we'll usually be with a organized a group and get around that way. Um, when I travel solo, I like to take local buses and trains, and on the right-hand side is a van that they call them dolmers. This was in eastern Turkey, and they're kind of just private drivers, and they drive around in the van. You hail them down, and you get in, and it's very economical. Not much on safety, though, as you can see. Um, okay, and There we go. Other ways of getting around that are kind of fun was this is in the picture in Tanzania and a Jeep safari. We've also done safaris in Africa and Botswana. Uh, in South Africa. And on the right, this was in India. This was a boat that we had exclusively to ourselves, Grace and I. And for 3 days, we sailed in the inland waterways around Kerala and southern India. That's our pilot, and we had a cook on board that would serve us, prepare and serve meals. And it was really great getting to see the life in these back channels of the country. And since a lot of my traveling has been to mountaineering, I'll give you some idea of what that all entails. First of all, it's not rock climbing. Some think rock climbing, but I don't have quite the nerve for that, nor the technical skill to be dangling from rocks on the sides of a mountain. What I do is generally take what I call day hikes. Could be here in the valley, could be in the west in the Rockies. Um, Day hike is kind of a loose term. One of my day hikes involved 22 and a half hours and getting up to almost 14,000 feet uh, in Utah. I started at 2 in the morning. I ended up at after midnight, half hour after midnight the next day. So that was considered a day hike. Um, let's see. And here's some when I go to places that I can't do in a day, involved special technical climbs, equipment, or involve several days travel. I generally sign up with guides, an outfit to help get me up and back. Um, on the uh, on the left-hand side, I'm up above the clouds there on Kilimanjaro. That's the tent for the night. Um, and when you're up that high, I don't advise getting out in the middle of the night when you're on the edge of a cliff like that. Um, the picture in the center is some of the crew that get you up and down this Kilimanjaro. They're really amazing how they carry everything on their heads. You pull into camp at the end of the day, and they got dinner going and tents up. And next morning, they take it all down and pass you on the trail to set up for the next night. On the right-hand side, I got all my gear in the pack. I'm leaving for Argentina to go to Mount Aconcagua, which is the highest in the Western Hemisphere. The stuff I had to bring along were ice axe, crampons, sleeping bag, helmet, um, and so forth, poles. Um, This is a picture on the left is in on Aconcagua, having to cross an icy stream. The one on the right is here in Idaho, the high peak and height at Mount Bora, and it involved a lot of exposure and risk. So I signed up, and if you can see, I'm kind of roped up here, and the 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 great part about this climb was that it coincided with the total eclipse of the sun back in 2017. And when I got to the summit and the uh, uh, the eclipse started, that was the highest place in the U.S. to be in a zone of totality and see an eclipse. Uh, this picture on the left is on Mount Ararat. This is our mess tent. There were 17 climbers, people from all over the world, Philippines, China, Latvia, Ukraine, Kurds. It was quite a great group of people. And on the right, another part of the climb up Mount Aconcagua, having to go across a little deeper river, and this time we were using the donkeys to get across. This is one on the left is the summit of Kilimanjaro, the highest point in Africa. It's quite cold. This was just before we left at 12:30 a.m. and this was just before sunrise. Just freezing. Hands were just frozen solid, but we made it. And sometimes it's fun to be able to get the next generation involved in the next two generations involved in the climbing. As my grandson, they were in Colorado a few years back, and Grace Peak for one of the 14ers. And I'm gonna. I understand the sound doesn't come up on this, but I'll give you some ideas. Sometimes the conditions. This is Mount Ararat, and that's me in the red cap there. And I know you're not hearing the wind is blowing, roaring in the background. But and sometimes it's very nice to get to the summit, and it's exhilarating. You get to work hard, but you get the payoff. You get up, you get nice views all around, and but other times it doesn't quite work out like that. And sometimes the mountain wins. And on the is looking at my face there was a result of a volcano of Parinacota in Bolivia. That was actually the highest I ever got, a little over 20,000 feet. But just about a football field from the summit, the guide said, no mas. The wind was so fierce, he was afraid we were going to get blown off. And on the way down, that volcanic ash from the surface kept blowing into my eyes to the point I couldn't really see. I just saw shadows, and I kept slipping, and I must have landed 25 times on my butt. But then one time I did a head over heels, and it resulted in these little bruises and scrapes. I also developed a couple of fingers from frostbite. Took a few weeks to clear up. So. So sometimes it could take a lot out of you. Okay, so now we're going to go getting back to my alphabet of the goal of reaching a country for each one. We're going to kind of use that as a format. And I'm going to start with A for Albania. Um, this was once a country, it's a very revolutionary country. They didn't like anybody at one point. They were hostile to every other nation. And in fact, they were on the list from the State Department of nations forbidden for U.S. citizens. These days, they're quite open. They welcome tourists. You don't even need a visa to get in. And B, we're in at Bhutan. Um, it's a very traditional country, steeped in the Buddhist religion. And in fact, they didn't, I think it was the year 2000 was they first allowed TV to be broadcast in the country. And so they allow that now, but they're still very strict about their dress. They have to wear the traditional garb. Uh, our guide, for example, he had to get a special dispensation because we were hiking to hike up into the hills. He had to get special dispensation to get hiking boots that weren't the traditional footwear. Um, Here you see some monks, and I think they're in training here, and they're doing some dancing out in the square. Then one of the national pastimes is archery, so kind of harken back to the Middle Ages here. And this woman up on the upper right, we had just Grace and I and the guide had just come down from a shrine, a Buddhist shrine on the top of the hill, and we passed this woman, and she starts laughing because she was looking. She has one pole there, and I had two, so she thought that was a riot that I had two poles, and and her situation was that as a senior, her family sent her to a Buddhist retreat at the bottom of this hill, and part of her life is going up, doing kind of a pilgrimage each day, going up and down the hill, and she's probably in great shape. On the bottom is Bulgaria. Uh, and I got to go to this. This is one of the main attractions in Bulgaria. It's a monastery called Rila, and during the day it's just loaded with tourists and pilgrims. I got to stay after everybody left, very peaceful, and stayed in a monk's cell overnight. Um, Sounds kind of austere, which it was, but not like a jail cell. It was comfortable. But, um, and we're going to go see. Got a couple countries here. Canada, sitting in Vancouver at a restaurant. The nude bike riders came by. I guess it's a tradition out there, and we got to see that in all its glory. Um, the little fellow on the bottom, this toucan, was in our first trip to Costa Rica, and sitting in the courtyard and chair, and I had my room key with sometimes they attach a wooden block on the end, and this toucan came up and he tried to steal with the key, and he really wanted to play, so we ended up playing for about a half hour with this key and the wood block. It was kind of fun. Uh, Second trip to Costa Rica was kind of out of the blue. One of my Grace's high school. Uh, she wasn't even a friend. He became very wealthy over the years, and he had 800,000 acres of land in Costa Rica that he produced ethanol on, and so he made his millions, and he decided to take the anybody who wanted to go from that senior class to Costa Rica. He paid for everything, airfare, food, lodging, entertainment, and so we got to do a lot of his. These are the hands on his ranch. Did a little pageant for us, a rodeo. We did horseback riding, and I'm on the uh, just zip line. Okay, Denmark. Uh, Everybody knows Little Mermaid. Um, but I really wanted to just do with Denmark is to highlight how, sometimes when you travel, you expect everything to turn out well, but on occasion they don't always. I've been pickpocketed in Madrid, um, times hitchhiking and never got to a place to stay for the night. Had to either sleep in a train station or just stay out overnight. But I know more than often than not, something was going wrong. Somebody would come to the rescue. And uh, when I was running out my year in Europe, when I was starting to dwindle down with money and realized that I'd get home, my plan was to get a job on a Scandinavian ship. I had been told that was the way to secure a job back to the States. So I headed back up to Scandinavia. I got to Göteborg in Sweden, and lo and behold, there's no ships in the port. And the locals tell me, well, if you want a Scandinavian ship, you got to go to Rotterdam or Antwerp. So now my money's running down. So uh, I wrote home and said, send the money that I kept home and as a reserve. And but of course, then no ATMs and so forth. This takes days. A bank draft had to be made and sent. And I said I'd pick it up in Rotterdam. So I head down. I get through the Danish border. I get to the German border. They, of all time, nobody had ever asked me in that year about money, but the Germans asked me how much money I had, and of course I didn't have enough, and they sent me back to Denmark. And fortunately, one of the border guards from Denmark, he invites me home, his house. I stayed overnight. He had dinner with his family, and he loans me about the equivalent of $50 uh, to get through. And sure enough, I get through Germany and get into Netherlands, and I go to the post office, and the money hasn't come yet. And so I was traveling with a guitar, and I had been on other occasions singing on the street. So I went out and did that. But the I think the proprietor of the hostel I was staying in must have turned me in, because the next morning I'm awakened at about 7 o'clock. Two guys in trench coats, flashing Interpol badges, um, asked me how much money I have, and so of course I didn't have enough. They take me to immigration jail. So I I had to spend 3 days in immigration jail. Each day that somebody from the U.S. consulate came and took me to the post office to see if the money came. The Thursday it came. They also secured for me a job on the Black Diamond Line, a Norwegian ship, and I got back home. But anyway, that's just to demonstrate how somebody would go out as a total stranger would loan me $50 and make it uh, make it all possible to get through. Okay. Ig, uh, Ecuador, up on the top there. It was a great trip. You get to the amazing thing is you get to get right up close to the wildlife, and they're not really wild; they're so tame. That's it. And he was our last October. Um, we got to go with our neighbors Doug and Linda, and had a great trip. The gentleman on the lower part there is uh, this was an Aswan, and he was a Nubian. Okay, he was a Nubian, and he told us about the plight of the Nubians that had to be displaced when President Nasser was building the Aswan Dam. Uh, so 37 out of the 50 Nubian communities were inundated with the water, and those people had to be moved somewhere else. And unfortunately, they were moved out of where they had their livelihood along the Nile. They were moved out into the desert. And this gentleman, though, was in one of the 13 that managed to keep their towns they weren't flooded. Um, and okay. Okay. F, we got Finland. This was crossing the Arctic Circle. Uh, Went up even further, went up into Norway, went up to Alta, kind of the last town in Norway. Uh, and this F for France. It's hard to do France justice in this little bit, but I went to France in 1967. I did to study at the University of Strasbourg, and Grace, when we were engaged back in the States, she came over and we got married. There we had as required, a civil ceremony at the mayor's, and then we had a church wedding at a Romanesque church built in the 1200s, and we had a dinner afterwards at this restaurant on the right over here, the Maison des Tanneurs. That goes back to 1400. Now below is our last trip to France. That was a couple of years ago. That's the hospital room that Van Gogh was residing in after his little episode with the ear. And the great part of that is that when you stroll the grounds around it, you're immersed in the exact landscapes that Van Gogh painted. Um, okay. Georgia, beautiful country. This is the statue in the middle there is in Tbilisi, the capital. This is the name of this is the mother of the Georgians. It overlooks the city. Um, and down on the bottom was in Greece. I got to race with a friend there. You can't see him because I beat him out. He's behind me there. This is the original track of in Olympia that the Olympians ran on. Okay. And Nature's for Hungary. I remember about Hungary, most was getting over we left from Vienna and getting in and out of the country. This was back in the Cold War era and the Iron Curtain. And remember them getting everybody out of the bus and then them sticking mirrors with poles underneath the chassis of the bus to make sure nobody was, I guess, hiding under there or bringing something in that they didn't deem appropriate. Okay. India. Uh, it's a great, this is a country now that's coming into the modern world, but this was back in 19. Our daughter went to spend a year there going to school or 10th grade, and we went to visit, and we had a gone to a tiger preserve, and we were heading back to Delhi, and the driver came up to us and said, we have to take a detour because the bridge got washed out in the storm, and we're going to have to take the ferry. So, in my mind, I'm thinking, the Bridgeport to Long Island, ferry, well, put a lot of cars on. Well, this is the ferry. Turned out to be this one little rowboat here, and they got the car on, and we got in a boat, and they rowed over to the other side. Um, this is a picture of this was we did this in 2018. This young fella is sponsored by the First Churches here, right here in Northampton. He lives in a Tibetan commune that is in India. When the Chinese took over Tibet, many Tibetans came over and to live in India, and this was at a school where he's studying, and like I said, the First Church sponsors his education there. So now that's his teacher, and his name's Dundup. And Italy. Um, so one of the reasons for travel is some family connections, and uh, over the years, our American Italian family had lost track of the Italian, and we were in Rome, and Grace suggested I, try to look up the family, and I went into the phone book. Uh, now you got 23andMe and DNA and all that stuff, but back then we just went to the phone book, and I see four Michulias. That's my mother's maiden name, and I said I'm just going to pick one, and if that works, fine. If not, we'll just leave. And I hit the jackpot on the first one, and since then we've been connected over the years. They visited the States. We've gone back to Italy and seen them. So that was a nice turn of events. The picture on the left was 2 years ago. We went to Sicily, and that's a picture of us in the Greek theater in Taormina with Mount Etna in the background, which I did get to climb up to, at least as far as they let you. It's an active volcano. And at one point, the guide, which I had to have, took a piece of paper out and threw it on the ground, and it immediately combusted into flame. So you have to watch where you put your feet. And Japan, J. This is a monastery retreat up in kind of middle northern Japan, and it's where the origin of the hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil comes from. The monkeys there, and at the time I went to Japan because from Korea I was stationed in Korea, and I got to go on leave, and the Koreans are very very open, and they're always happy to greet you and give you time of day. But in Japan, they're much more reserved. And I was on a train, and I could tell this woman kept on looking at me, but every time I tried to give her eye contact, she turned away. And that's just kind of the difference in the two countries that I found. Uh, hey, um, so strolling down Bill Clinton Boulevard, came across Bill Clinton statue. And he's very popular in Kosovo because he was apparently instrumental in their becoming an independent nation. And we got Latvia and Lithuania. Well, in Latvia, we had kind of a kerfuffle trying to check out of our hotel. That morning, Grace had sat down uh, on the toilet seat, on the cover, the lid, and it produced a crack in the lid. So, as good citizens we are, we got to check out. We mentioned that there was a crack in the lid. At which point they tried to charge us about $150 to repair the damage. We had our guide came in. It was a big argument, and they were going to call the police, and people were waiting on the bus to leave. And so we finally settled at $80, and When we got home, we contacted it was Sofitel was the hotel, a French hotel, and they gave us our money back. But it was frustrating at the time. And we got a few things here. We got okay, in the center we have Moldova, very interesting place. And what I found really interesting was this. I guess he was a farmer, and he was giving commands out over here to these geese, and he would give a command, and the geese would turn left, and then they'd turn right, and he was actually I never saw anything like that. They were in total unison. His, um, and you have Morocco on the right, and then Malta. We got to go there before we went to Sicily. It was a couple of years ago, uh, and country goes way back. Phoenicians, Arabs were there, um, the Italians, and even the British had control of it for some time. Uh, they were beautiful. Coastlines, and we were lucky to stay at a hotel that had one of the only sandy beaches in the country. Most of it's pretty rocky like that. Uh, okay, and Nepal. There's a little guy giving a namaste. People are very polite. You do a lot of bowing when you're there. Um, on this picture of I'm up on Mira Peak. I'm up at 18,000 feet right now, and there's Everest is right in the back there somewhere, right about there. That's as close as I got to Everest. Um, countries just not there's no level once you get up in the mountains there's nothing level, and you're going up and down, and people carry enormous amounts of weight, as you could see. I mean, this is a man, that's his wife up there, carrying, it must be hundreds of pounds of wood on his back. It's amazing. And one of the things that happened while I was there was this was 2015, the earthquake came, and a lot of damage. And I was lucky I was in Lukla, which was fairly safe. Um, that was where the Everest expeditions all fly into, and that's where they were bringing the casualties from the people up at base camp that were in the earthquake when the avalanche came. This was in Kathmandu. You could see what that tower looked like before the earthquake. Okay. Oh, Oman is finished my goal for doing the alphabet as our bus driver getting into Oman. This is a wadi, which the country is um, very dry, very arid. It's mountainous, and very little greenery. But these wadis provide where the water collects, and you get a lot of vegetation along the way. It's very picturesque. Um, okay, and I could just do this. There we go. And Peru, we got Machu Picchu, just amazing sight. Um, Down on the lower part, one of the delicacies in that area of the world, the guinea pig. And this is a home. Actually, people that farm the guinea pigs for that purpose, they keep them right running around in their kitchen. Um, this is a salt mine in Poland where the miners did a lot of artistic work. Again, and Q, that was the only Q country is Qatar. Um, there we go. I'm running out of time here, so I gotta. R is for Romania. Those are there are eight churches going back to 1500s, the painted wooden churches, and it's Russia. Uh, and this was a Matisse painting at the uh, Hermitage, South Africa. Um, I was climbed up Table Mountain, which overlooks Cape Town. Got to meet a bunch of the high school students there, very friendly bunch of kids. Like I said before, I was stationed in South Korea, the Air Force, and here I am protecting the world for democracy, holding back the hordes. I actually just happened in Seoul, happened upon a movie set, and they let me play along with the cast. And the Korea was just wonderful for, like I said, the people are very outgoing, very friendly, always willing to have their pictures taken. And this is just some of this was a wedding down here that they let us in. We got to eat dinner with them, and they got the pictures. My friend there took pictures for them for their wedding. Um, just scenes around the Air Force Base and Turkey, great country, lot of history involved. This was one of the peak experience, lifetime experiences, riding a balloon. It was the only time we rode a balloon, and we actually got up to go into this little crevice between the rocks. Uh, these women, this was the last day of Ramadan, and everybody was out eating in the restaurants and so forth. Tanzania, got kind of up close with this lion. I was in that Jeep that you saw earlier, and she came right up alongside, and could hear the panting as she went by. Very exciting. You UAE, tallest building in the world, biggest biggest mall in the world. They got ice rink. This was a waterfall. Uh, every store imaginable. And on the lower right was a beautiful mosque in Abu Dhabi. Uh, get to the end here. Oh, Vatican City. That's kind of self-explanatory. There are currently no W's, but I did when West Germany was still separate. I did get to West Germany. Being from school in Strasbourg, it was easy to get over to Germany trips. Yugoslavia now is I think seven separate nations. But this is the Mostar Bridge in Bosnia-Herzegovina. This is Bishop Nin in Split, Croatia. This is Square in Montenegro, and this is Ohrid um, in Macedonia. Now it's North Macedonia. And finally up to Z, we got Zimbabwe. We got the beautiful Victoria Falls, and we got to a folk show in the evening. Quite quite colorful costumes. And so that's the end of the Z, but I just want to mention, I think Sarah mentioned that I'm doing high pointing, and just did 15 high points this year, and now I'm up to 44. So some are easy, like you can barely see. This is Kansas, Mount Sunflower, kind of, you can't even tell you're on a hill, it's flat. And others like Mount Hood required, it was a technical climb requiring the crampons and ice axe and so forth. And just going to leave you on a note here. It's always a good travel tip. It's always a good thing to plan ahead for your for next time nature calls. Don't get caught in the desert here without a restroom. And I hope you enjoyed that. We'll get back to Sarah. Okay.
Okay, and we'll try to get back to everybody. We have a few questions in the that people have posed. The first one, you answered one. What are some good travel tips? You just answered that one.
Actually, you mentioned I volunteer at the elementary school, Ryan Road. The kids last year they printed me, each class, second grade class, printed me out a booklet with their ideas on travel tips. So like I should take a stuffy, I should go first class, drink plenty of water, so that they had good tips.
Um, have you ever wanted to stop hiking?
No, to stop hiking?
Uh-huh.
No, I still have goals. Like I said, I'm up to 44 on the high points. And I know at 81, I'm not going to be doing the Mount Denali. That's a bit too extreme for me at this point. But there are several more I can be doing. Texas, I think I might do this coming year with my brother, who lives in Texas, and maybe Hawaii at some point. That'll get me up to 46, and the rest are technical, but we'll see about those. So that's a goal, and then I'd like to get to 100, at least 100 countries visited too.
When you turn 100, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um, did you ever get altitude sickness, especially when you were in Bolivia?
Uh, no, because I learned my lesson. The first time trying to go up a 14,000 foot mountain was Mount Whitney. But Grace and I had driven up from sea level at San Diego the day before, and that wasn't enough to get acclimated to the altitude. So going up Whitney is 22 miles. And 14 and a half thousand feet. And I got up to 13,000 feet and I got just terribly sick. I just couldn't keep anything down. And then at that point, I was 9 miles up, and I had to get myself back down. So I learned my lesson. And the next time I went back to Whitney, I think 3 years later, and I did some hiking, climbing in at lower mountains in Yosemite to prepare, and that worked. And I haven't been sick since.
Good. Um, what's the most dangerous country you were ever in terms of crime, government supervision of you, and any virus or infection fears?
Uh, well, we did go to in India. We went to Kashmir, and there was a presence of getting off at the airports. You escorted with people with guns, and even we on the streets. We drove up into the mountains and little towns. They'd stop the vehicle. It's guys with they didn't look like they just looked like monyards with carrying guns, and they'd question the driver, and we got on. Same thing in eastern Turkey. I think because of the Kurds and the Syrians and the Iranis, that area of the world, they would stop the buses as you went along and checking people's identification and so forth. Um, the only time I really felt frightened was the biggest scare I got was we got a hitchhiking in Yugoslavia. The driver had come from Germany that morning. He was a Greek citizen. He was going back to visit, and he was starting to fall asleep. And I was watching him. And at one point, I look over and I see back then in Yugoslavia there were donkey carts on the road. Even this is a big highway, and he's heading right for the donkey cart. And I just reached over and pulled the wheel, and we averted it. So that was my scariest moment. But other than that, that could happen anywhere. Well, not with the donkey cart.
Hey,
Yeah.
when did you actually start visiting your alphabet of countries? And
Oh, okay.
did you tell the people in those countries that that's what you were doing? You were trying to do the whole alphabet, the
Um,
American
I, I
alphabet?
I think it was somewhere around maybe 2005 that I made a list of the countries that I'd been to, and alphabetical, and then I noticed I was just missing a few. At that point, I was missing K, R, Q. Uh, yeah, I think that was it. K, R, Q. Oh, the O and yeah, and the O. Um, so by going to Russia and Romania, that got the R. Kosovo got the K, and then the Q. I stopped and I made a point to go into Nepal to stop off, and on the way I flew uh, Qatar Airlines, so I was able to stay over and Qatar to get the Q. So that I made a point to do, but and then yeah.
And what's one of your favorite countries?
Well, people always ask that. I would say between France and Italy, because we've done numerous trips to each, and every region of those countries has as something different, and just the basis of the history and the arts and the food, the language. You could, could get by in French, and the family ties in Italy. Um, uh, and the varied landscape. You have mountains, you have sea. Those two are I'd have to say. Yeah.
And I only have one final question. What are the next two countries that you haven't visited yet that you would go to?
Well, I'm interested in doing a number of the stands. Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan. Well, one of them's hard to get in, and um, yeah. So those, I think there's about four or five of them that in Central Asia that are kind of intriguing. Kind of the old Silk Route countries.
And another question just came in. What
Yeah.
and where was your favorite food?
Oh, my favorite food.
Just food, not scenery, not mountains, nothing else. Food.
Oh, well, I like a lot of different dishes, but one thing we really enjoyed when I was after um, when I went to school in France there on every Wednesday, the Jewish student restaurant would serve couscous, and all the Arab Algerians, the Moroccans, all the students, they'd all go to this restaurant. And that was the first time I ever had couscous, and we used to go every week. So they really prepare it well, and so that's what just comes to mind. But I like all sorts of food. In Korea, I ate wonderful things, but I didn't know what it was because we'd go with the local, some of the locals that worked at the base. They'd take you to these, they call makgeolli houses, and there'd be food coming out, one dish after another, and you never knew what it was, but they were all good. Uh, Except the kimchi, you have to develop a taste for, but other than that,
Another question, just to encourage the rest of us. Um, Sorry, I just lost it. Has traveling gotten any harder as you've gotten older? And what do you do about that?
um, no, I don't think it's gotten harder. I I still go to youth hostels. Grace has said that she's been to her last youth hostel a long time ago, but I find them very good at being able to if you travel alone, it's a great way to meet other people and other travelers, and you learn a lot from them, and it's good company. So I do that, and we have like I said, we've just organized tours, and we've used the group Smart Tours. In fact, the last trip to Egypt we did with Smart Tours, and for some countries that is the easier way to go because sometimes it's a little hard getting around. I had the trip I did to Oman and Dubai last year. In Oman, I couldn't find the hostel. It's not like the ones in Europe where they were kind of freestanding and they got their own symbols, and you could tell. I had an address, but it didn't match up with anything that I could find. And I went into a shop, and I asked somebody because I was in the area, and he said, "Oh, come with me." And he left the shop, and he took me in his car. This was around rush hour. We were 45 minutes driving around Oman because he said on my voucher I did have a picture of the building, and he said I've seen that building somewhere, so we drove 45 minutes, and finally he spies the building. It was just amazing that he'd take that time to do that and get around. So um, so that was one difficulty, but generally when you're traveling with a group or something, they do all that work for you. So uh, I think it's easier now to travel.
Okay, I'm going to put you on gallery view. Does anyone have a question that they want to just raise their own hand and unmute themselves? Or unmute yourself and just speak up. Otherwise, we're going to come to the end. All right, thank you very much, Gerard. When we're on Zoom, we don't clap anymore, so we'll just go like that. And thank you very much. That was wonderful. Goodbye, everybody.
All right. Thank you. Thanks.